You know, the most successful pirate in all of history wasn't a man. Nope, she was a former prostitute who ended up commanding this massive maritime empire. I mean, we're talking a force that made the Spanish Armada look small, and she terrorized the entire South China Sea.
Just think about these numbers for a second. At the absolute peak of her power, she had over 70,000 sailors under her direct command. And her armada, it was made up of more than 1,800 ships. That is just staggering. So, let me ask you this. When you think of the greatest pirate of all time, who pops into your head? Blackbeard, maybe? Calico Jack?
Well, it wasn't any of them. It was a woman known to history as Zhang Yi Sao. And her story, it's one of the most incredible and honestly most overlooked tales in all of maritime history.
Okay, so let's dive into her incredible story. We're going to start by just trying to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of her power. Then we'll trace her rise from a floating brothel all the way to the flagship, see how she seized absolute command, and then look at the revolutionary code she used to rule. After that, we'll watch her defeat the world's navies and finally uncover her most audacious move of all, her retirement.
All right, first up, let's really establish just how massive her operation truly was. Because this wasn't just some small band of buccaneers, you know? This was basically a floating nation.
Okay, to really put this into perspective, let's compare her to someone we all know, Blackbeard. Probably the most famous pirate in the West, right? He had 4 ships and about 300 men. Now look at Zhang Yi. She commanded the Red Flag Fleet. 1,800 ships and 70,000 pirates. She wasn't just in a different league, she was playing an entirely different game. It's not even close. So, the big question is, how did a woman in early 19th century China pull this off? Well, her journey starts not on a warship, but in the pretty marginalized world of Guangdong's waterfront. Let's go back to her beginnings.
She was born Shiyang in 1775. And her early life was spent working on what were called flower boats, basically floating brothels that catered to sailors and merchants. But here's the thing. She was way more than just a victim of her circumstances. She built a reputation as this incredibly shrewd businesswoman, someone who knew all the secrets of her powerful clients. And that's what caught the eye of the notorious pirate lord Zhang Yi. When he proposed marriage, she said yes, but not before making a critical demand.
And this right here, this just brilliantly shows you her ambition from the very start. This wasn't a rescue mission for her, it was a merger. She demanded an equal partnership, and guess what? She got it. While her husband was the charismatic figurehead, she was the real organizer, the strategist who helped forge a whole mess of rival gangs into a single, terrifying pirate confederation.
Then, in 1807, crisis strikes. Her husband is killed in a typhoon. Now, in a world where power is everything, a widow would normally be cast aside, right? But Zhang Yi Sao, she saw an opportunity. And she moved with breathtaking speed. Instead of just fading into the background, she immediately started forging alliances with her late husband's relatives. She knew her biggest threat was this popular commander, her husband's adopted son, a guy named Zhang Bao. So she didn't fight him, she co-opted him. She took him as a lover, eventually married him, and just like that, transformed a potential rival into her most powerful ally. She became the undisputed commander of the entire confederation. Just brilliant. Okay, so now she's in charge of tens of thousands of outlaws. How in the world do you maintain control? Well, she did it by creating something truly remarkable, a comprehensive and, yeah, brutally enforced legal code.
And this wasn't just about punishment, it was about nation building. I mean, look at the strategic thinking here. Disobey an order, you get beheaded. That ensures military discipline. Steal from the shared treasury, execution. That protects the whole economy. And this one is maybe the most revolutionary. The rape of a female captive was a capital offense. This wasn't just some abstract morality, it was a practical way to prevent the kind of internal conflicts that could tear the whole fleet apart.
Her financial system was just as sophisticated. Individual pirates, they only kept 20% of their plunder. The other 80% went into a public fund. That money was used to maintain the fleet, buy supplies, and basically take care of the community. This is what ensured the long-term viability of her empire. It turned piracy from just a smash-and-grab operation into a sustainable enterprise. So, with her confederation disciplined and well-funded, Zhang Yi Sao turned her attention outwards. And for the next couple of years, she was effectively the government of the South China Sea. And she proved to be an absolutely untouchable military genius.
The Qing Imperial Navy sent fleet after fleet to try and stop her, and she just crushed them every single time. Get this, in 1 year alone, she captured 63 of their ships. She ran the entire salt trade, collected taxes from coastal villages. She even had her own tax offices in port cities. In one famous battle, the wind completely died, leaving both fleets just stranded. What did she do? She simply ordered her pirates to swim over and board the enemy ships. It was a total victory. The humiliated Chinese admiral actually took his own life.
But her greatest test for sure came in 1809. The Chinese government was so desperate, they enlisted the help of the Portuguese Navy. And together, they trapped her entire red flag fleet in Tung Chung Bay, sealing the only exit. It really looked like this was the end.
Their plan was simple and absolutely brutal. Send in fire ships, vessels packed with explosives, to burn her entire armada right down to the waterline. For any other commander, this would have been an inescapable death trap. But as we know, Zheng Yisao was not any other commander. As the fire ships got close, she ordered her crews to use these long poles to fend them off, literally redirecting the burning vessels right back toward the enemy fleet. It's genius! When the wind finally changed, she led a charge, broke the blockade, and escaped with minimal losses, having completely humiliated the combined forces of two empires.
So after years of just unbeatable success, Zheng Yisao understood that this war couldn't last forever. So in 1810, she decided to quit while she was ahead. And she orchestrated her most brilliant maneuver yet. Not a battle, but a negotiation.
And this is just a masterclass in psychological warfare. She didn't send some envoy. No, she herself walked unarmed right into the Governor General's office, and she was only accompanied by women and children to really highlight that these pirates had families too. It was such an audacious move that it put the government completely on the back foot, and she flat out refused to leave until they met her terms.
And what terms they were. She secured a full pardon for herself and the vast majority of her followers. She was allowed to keep all her loot. Her husband was made a high-ranking officer in the very military they had just been fighting, and they even got to keep a personal fleet. She didn't just surrender, she completely won the peace.
So, at just 35 years old, the greatest pirate in history retired as a wealthy, powerful, and free woman. After her husband died, she went back to Canton, used her plunder to open a successful gambling house, and just lived out the rest of her days in peace and comfort. She died at the ripe old age of 69. What a life!
Ultimately, the story of Zheng Yisao is so much more than just a pirate tale. It's a story about power, about gender, and about the hidden figures who really shape our world. It kind of forces you to ask, right? What other monumental stories, what other empires built by these unlikely hands have just been left in the margins of our history books?